Today, April 27, 2026, Microsoft and OpenAI announced something that ends one of the defining deals in the history of artificial intelligence. In a jointly published statement on the Microsoft and OpenAI blogs, both companies confirmed an amended partnership agreement that strips out the single most valuable piece Microsoft owned: exclusive access to OpenAI's frontier models. Starting today, Google, Amazon, Oracle, and any other cloud rival are free to host OpenAI's offerings directly. The exclusivity that defined the last 7 years of enterprise AI is gone. Read the joint statement carefully, and the spin sounds friendly. Quote, "Today we are announcing an amended agreement to simplify our partnership," end quote. But simplify is a remarkable word for what just happened. Microsoft built its entire enterprise AI moat on the idea that if you wanted ChatGPT, GPT-5, or anything else with the OpenAI brand, you bought it through Azure. That moat just dissolved. There is more. The bidirectional revenue share that has run between the two companies since 2019 is also ending. OpenAI will continue paying Microsoft a 20% revenue share through 2030, but those payments are now subject to a total dollar cap, a cap whose specific figure neither company will disclose. Once the cap is hit, the payments stop, even if OpenAI keeps growing. And Microsoft, which previously paid a revenue share back to OpenAI on Azure OpenAI service revenue, no longer pays anything in return. It is a one-way arrangement now, finite, capped, and frozen against further model breakthroughs. The license itself extends through 2032, so Microsoft can keep shipping OpenAI products inside Azure, Copilot, and Office for another 6 years. But the right of first refusal Microsoft used to enjoy on OpenAI Compute is also gone. OpenAI products will still ship first on Azure, but only when Microsoft can or chooses to support the required capabilities. That is corporate language for, if Azure cannot deliver, OpenAI walks across the street. Maybe the biggest single change is buried near the end of both blog posts. The clause that defines when OpenAI has achieved AGI, artificial general intelligence, used to be a unilateral declaration. OpenAI's own board could simply decide and announce it. Under the amended agreement, AGI determination now requires verification by an independent expert panel. Microsoft is, for the first time, free to pursue AGI on its own or with third parties. And if Microsoft uses OpenAI IP to build it, the resulting models face compute thresholds significantly larger than today's leading systems. Wall Street did not love the news. Microsoft stock dropped as much as 5% intraday before paring its losses to about 2% on the close. Citi, while keeping its buy rating, cut its price target to $600 from $635. When you see what Microsoft just gave up, it is hard not to ask, why now? Why give up exclusivity, give up first refusal, freeze the revenue share, and let your biggest AI partner walk into the arms of Amazon and Google, all on the same Monday morning? What really happened today is not that Microsoft lost OpenAI. It is that Microsoft finally admitted it could not afford to keep OpenAI to itself. Start with the numbers. Microsoft has poured roughly $13 billion into OpenAI since 2019. That investment now corresponds to a 27% stake in OpenAI's commercial wing, valued at around $135 billion on the day of the announcement. That is a return of more than 10 times in 7 years on paper, an extraordinary outcome by any normal measure. Microsoft is not walking away from OpenAI. It is renegotiating from a position of having already won, financially. But there is a different number that explains today's deal. Of Microsoft's $625 billion AI revenue backlog, the contractual commitments customers have signed for AI services, roughly 45% is tied directly to OpenAI offerings. That is more than $280 billion of forward revenue, depending on a single supplier whose contracts Microsoft does not fully control. For a company the size of Microsoft, that level of single supplier concentration is not strategy. It is risk. So look at what Microsoft secured in exchange. OpenAI committed to purchase an incremental $250 billion of Azure services as part of the amended deal. That is on top of the original $250 billion Azure contract granted in October 2025 when OpenAI completed its commercial conversion. Stack the two, and OpenAI alone accounts for roughly $500 billion of locked Azure spending. The license to ship OpenAI products extends through 2032. The revenue share continues through 2030. From Microsoft's point of view, the compute and license relationship is not loosening, it is hardening. What is loosening is the exclusivity, and that is by design. Here is the part the press releases do not foreground. Microsoft's ownership share of OpenAI before the October 2025 conversion was 32.5%. When that conversion closed last fall, Microsoft's stake was diluted to 27%. So Microsoft has already absorbed one round of dilution, and the new arrangement essentially says that is the final number. No more dilution, no more sliding scale, no more bidirectional revenue dance. The cap dollar figure that neither side will disclose is, in essence, the price Microsoft is paying for clean books going into earnings season. Listen to what the analysts are saying. Raimo Lenschow at Barclays said the new deal, quote, sets a clear framework, end quote. Kirk Materne at Evercore pointed to, quote, clear incentives to expand distribution more broadly across the market, end quote. Translation, cleaner accounting, fewer footnotes, and a thesis Microsoft can sell to investors without having to explain a private company's governance fight every quarter. Then there is the AGI clause. Under the old contract, when OpenAI declared AGI, Microsoft's commercial rights to OpenAI IP would expire. That was a hand grenade sitting on the company's balance sheet. OpenAI could, in theory, declare AGI tomorrow, and a $13 billion investment plus a $250 billion compute contract would face a sudden, ambiguous cliff. Moving that determination to an independent expert panel, with compute thresholds larger than today's leading systems, neutralizes the single biggest piece of contract uncertainty Microsoft was carrying. For OpenAI's investors, it does the same thing in reverse. The amended language gives bankers and the SEC a clean disclosure story ahead of an IPO, which sources have widely reported is being targeted for some time in 2026. But for everyone outside Microsoft, the implications are much bigger. Start with Anthropic. Microsoft had already begun hedging on OpenAI back in March 2026, when it added Anthropic's Claude Sonnet to M365 Copilot. At the time, the move read like a polite nod toward model diversity. With today's amendment, that hedge becomes the strategy. The Copilot you use next year will not be powered by one model. It will be a marketplace, with OpenAI models, Anthropic models, and likely Microsoft's own internal systems, all running side by side. That is how AWS Bedrock has always been positioned. Microsoft is now copying it. Amazon and Google are the other immediate winners. Amazon already had a multi-billion-dollar OpenAI compute agreement, plus a major expansion announced earlier in February 2026, and today's deal makes those numbers operationally real. Google Cloud, which has been competing against OpenAI with Gemini for years, can now host the very same models it competes with, capturing infrastructure revenue from a rival's success. Oracle, which signed its own OpenAI compute contract in 2025, also gains. The cloud customer who wants OpenAI no longer has to want Azure. The single supplier walls of the last cycle just came down everywhere at once. Now look at the dramatic timing. The amendment lands the same day jury selection opens in Musk v. Altman in Oakland, the long-running suit Elon Musk filed against OpenAI and Sam Altman, alleging breach of the original nonprofit mission. Musk's amended complaint asks the court to unwind OpenAI's commercial conversion and force Microsoft to disgorge any gains from the deal. The fact that Microsoft and OpenAI chose to publish their amended partnership on this exact morning is not subtle. It signals to the court and to the jury that the deal is settled, the structure is clean, and any unwinding would now have to undo not just the October 2025 conversion, but a fresh April 2026 amendment with disclosed economics. It is a legal hardening. There is also the human story. Earlier in 2026, reports surfaced that Microsoft had considered legal action against OpenAI over the Amazon deal, and Sam Altman publicly acknowledged on the New York Times podcast that there were, quote, points of tension, end quote, with Satya Nadella. OpenAI's revenue chief Denise Dresser had been quoted framing the prior arrangement as having limited the company's ability to meet enterprises where they are. Today's announcement is the public resolution of those tensions. Both sides got something they needed. Both sides gave up something they wanted. That is what real partnerships look like at this scale, and it is the part the friendly blog post language is engineered to hide. The era of single cloud, single model AI exclusivity is over. The deal that defined enterprise AI from 2019 through 2025 was Microsoft and OpenAI. Closed loop, bidirectional, exclusive. Starting today, no enterprise customer is locked into a single provider, no model is sold through a single channel, and no cloud has a guaranteed seat at the frontier. That is a structural shift in how AI gets bought and sold, and it is going to ripple through every Copilot rollout, every Bedrock contract, every Vertex deployment, every Foundry blueprint for the rest of this year. Watch 3 things over the next 90 days. The OpenAI IPO timeline, because the AGI clause was the biggest blocker, and it is now resolved. Microsoft's Q3 earnings call, which will be the first time investors hear management explain the trade in their own words. And the Anthropic revenue numbers, because if Claude on Copilot is real, Anthropic's growth will tell the story before any press release does. The exclusivity era is over. The marketplace era starts now.